Rambo is the poster boy for the American industrial military might. He's the gun-toting, maniac-looking, far-right pro-Mr. USA freedom fries, and the guy this guy put his face on in the 2016 US presidential election. Or at least, that's the perception most people in 2022, 40 years after the release of the original film, seem to have of Stallone's second most iconic character. The image of Reagan holding up the Rambo as a Republican sign, or watching the movie during the Beirut hostage crisis, saying after, "Boy, after seeing Rambo last night, I know what to do next time this happens," still embedded pretty firmly in the cultural psyche surrounding the character. The irony being that this is in no way where the character started. In both the David Morrell novel and the 1982 movie, First Blood, Rambo is shown in such a way that I less question whether he's a Republican, more does he have ID other than his dog tags.
What do you know about that? Old Harry here's a soldier. Rambo. John J.
The book was originally published by David Morrell in 1972.
I had students just back from Vietnam who had a whole lot of trouble accepting me as an authority figure. Many of them were younger than I was. And what gives you the right to tell us what to do when we've been over there risking our life for our country? So I used to hang around after class to talk to them, to try to understand what was going on in their minds. They would tell me about how they had trouble sleeping, how they had nightmares, how if they heard backfires or loud noises, it wasn't uncommon for some of them to dive to the pavement. It was then I began to learn about certain behavior patterns that we now call post-trauma stress. And I thought what I would do was write a novel which was about a version of the students whom I'd had. The book was published in 1972.
In the height of anti-Vietnam War sentiment in the United States. The war, that had been raging for 17 years and would go on for another 3, had struck a chord in the American psyche and had caused the largest anti-war reaction in all the United States history. After World War II, where laws keeping the United States out of foreign affairs had been removed, the US placed itself as the leaders of the free world and the symbol of libertarianism, yet to gallantly fight off the red wave arising from the East. And as freedom's protectors, the United States poured billions into the military spending in the 1930s, adjusted for inflation, averaging about $6.2 billion a year in spending. After World War II, spent a gargantuan amounts more, by 1960 spending $47 billion in one fiscal year. Even as Europe cooled down, the US kept the Second War raging in Japan, and barely after that has ended, started new conflicts in Korea against China and the Soviet Union, and soon as after that, joined France in its fight to reclaim Vietnam. Officially sending in troops in 1963, already 8 years into the conflict, and over the following 12, the United States lost 58,220 men in combat and an additional 300,000 due to the effects of Agent Orange in the years following.
It is no wonder that this life-saving capability of the Army Air Mobile Team is one of the major factors in sustaining the morale and fighting spirit of the soldier.
It was the first war in the 20th century America had lost, and took its toll as one of the greatest shames in the country's military history, and leaving 8.2 million American veterans. Morrell's book, coming out before the end of the war, as a dramatization of what happens when one of the war-broken men returned to the US. These scarred, wide-eyed men, maybe once considered golden boys, now rough, scared, and wondering. The Boy Scout, who had been told his entire life he lived in the greatest nation on earth, number 1, the Unstoppable, had been sent off to a far-off jungle where he didn't belong, and despite his best efforts, lost. The technically superior world superpower had lost to farmers wanting independence. They were no longer the underdogs rebelling against a far-off empire, but instead had evolved into a country not unlike the empire the US had fought for its own independence, and like that empire, lost. But that wasn't their fault. They shouldn't have ever been there. They were just the Boy Scouts sent there. in 1984, President Reagan made a speech on the beaches of Normandy to commemorate the 40th anniversary of when American Rangers had stormed it.
The Rangers looked up and saw the enemy soldiers, the edge of the cliffs, shooting down at them with machine guns and throwing grenades. And the American Rangers began to climb.
The event was a public acknowledgement in the height of American patriotism that the acts of valor committed in the victorious war that the US were proud of. But the thing that many Vietnam veterans felt was that although ostensibly they had been in a similar situation, Reagan's words didn't apply to them.
All of you loved liberty. All of you were willing to fight tyranny. And you knew the people of your countries were behind you.
Veterans believed in liberty. They were told they were fighting tyranny. They just weren't sure whether their country was behind them.
Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Down, goddammit!
What the hell is going on down here?
And that's why Rambo was the old Boy Scout, scared, beaten up, and shipped away, but still trying to live in the same all-American moral.
Drive. Don't look at me, look at the road. That's how accidents happen.
He is trying to walk free, and is arrested for it, despite following their orders and being damn good at it.
With a man who's the best. With guns, with knives, with his bare hands. A man who's been trained to ignore pain. Ignore weather.
He was a reminder of failure, and the US didn't want that, so tried to stuff him away in a cell. There was a sentiment felt by many returning vets that they were unwanted in America they returned to. They couldn't find help or stability or a job.
Back there I could fly a gunship. I could drive a tank. I was in charge of $1 million equipment. Back here I can't even hold a job. Fucking cars! Ah!
Fundamentally, the character is not John Wick or James Bond. He's not a machine, and that's the key in his difference to other action characters. His humanity is what makes him, what separates him from the tanks and helicopters and pilots. It's what motivates him, his choices, and what keeps him alive. There's a quote from the third film.
Let me tell you a story, John. There was a sculptor, and he found this stone, a special stone. He dragged it home, and he worked on it for months, until he finally finished. When he was ready, he showed it to his friends, and they said he had created a great statue. And the sculptor said he hadn't created anything. The statue was always there. He just cleared away the small pieces.
The Colonel here suggesting that he removed all the weaker sides of Rambo, burned it into fuel to raise the power that propelled him in Vietnam. But what I would suggest is it rather is more of a case where he took what made him a person, attempting to transform him into a killing machine, but couldn't take away his humanity. Rambo doesn't talk to people, he can barely socialize, he doesn't get in anyone's way and minds himself, but that's a choice he does out of fear. He's still scared. He's still emotional. He's not the cold, calculating character Troutman wants him to be, because he's still worried and acknowledging all that he's seen. When Troutman's introduced,
Never possessed God in heaven to make a man like Rambo.
God didn't make Rambo. I made him.
he attempts to take ownership of what Rambo is, but he can't. He can take credit for the fighting training, and he can take credit for the scars. Rambo, to quote the Old Testament, Psalm 82:6, "Ye are gods, and all of you are children of the highest." Translating to say, humans are children of God. God, for lack of a better example, is who made Rambo, who gave him his fear, who gave him his bravery, who gave him all his humanity. The character of the sheriff supposed to oppose Rambo, himself a vet, though that is, however, the only thing he shares with the movie's protagonist. a veteran of the Korean War, a war very unlike the Vietnam War, and has little to no effect on him or his country, literally being titled The Forgotten War. If Rambo's response to Vietnam is supposed to be symbolic of that of his country, it leaving it without any whole piece of itself and needing to start again, as does the sheriff's. The Korean War, soon coming after the end of World War II, was the mounting idea that the US couldn't lose. It was a war that was fought overseas, unlike Vietnam, not televised, and resulting in only 40,000 American casualties in full 3 years. The soldiers returned home from what was considered a good fight that they were victorious in, and promptly moved on. There was no movement, no change in government caused by the war in the country, and its citizens moved on. This beginning the sheriff's own dislike in Rambo, himself thinking why this man, who he assumes was in the same position as him, couldn't continue as he had been doing.
Listen, hard-ass, as things stand right now, you're facing the ass end of a 90-day incarceration, plus a $250 fine, which you don't look to me like you can pay. At 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, you're going up in front of that judge. And you think we're tough. Now, we're going to make you a little bit more presentable for your courtroom appearance. Between now and then, you can just impress the hell out of me by doing exactly as you're told.
Based on the book by Morrell, of course has differences primarily in the brutality of the story. The changes, made mostly if not all because of the changing political tides in the US, and how the country had come to terms with Vietnam. The movie originally pushed back due to the ending of the war.
Working on it for 3 months, he said, "We decided we're not going to make this film." I said, "What?" I said, "But Bob, I've been working on it for 3 months." He said, "Yeah, but just too close to the Vietnam War, and people in America just don't want to hear about the Vietnam War."
This, however, possibly a blessing, because it allowed there to be more of a civil taking on of the themes of the book.
I didn't do anything!
The movie, coming out in '82, 10 years after the book, and 7 years after the end of Vietnam, and people had had more time to reconcile how they felt about the war. In the original story, for example, Rambo violently kills multiple guards, in the escape that in the movie is relatively harmless, but in the book starts with a brutal murder. Rambo slashed the razor straight across his stomach. Galt peered stupidly down at the knee-deep slash across his belly, blood soaking his shirt and pouring down his pants, organs bulging out like plumped up in a tube through the slit in the tire. He took a finger and tried poking his organs back in, but they kept poking out. Blood soaked his pants and running out his cuffs onto the floor as he made a funny little noise in his throat and toppled over across the chair, upsetting him. The change made particularly to give the direct point that Rambo kills no one in the movie. This was a choice made by Stallone, made with the real-world repercussions in mind, and him not wanting people to fear veterans or villainize them. Stallone wanted to make very clear these men were heroes. And then we come to the famous change in endings, the book ending with Rambo's death, and the movie ending with him getting out of handcuffs but alive. The original ending, always disliked by Stallone, and though filmed, not made the final cut. This coming after a monologue where Rambo fully opens up in the movie, giving a glimpse into his mind.
Fucking blew his body all over the place. And he's laying there and he's fucking screaming, there's pieces of him all over me, just like this, and I'm trying to pull him off, you know, and it's my friend that's all over me!
And this is where the counteraction, in that the original ending suggests that because of that, he must be cut down, that he can't survive.
I just don't think it should be done. It sends out the wrong message. I mean, every Vietnam vet who sees this goes, oh, the only solution is that death is the only thing that awaits us at the end of the tunnel, and I don't think that's the right way to do it.
Fundamentally, Stallone's filmography is about characters pushing themselves, be that Rocky or Ray Breslin from the Escape Plan films. He's a man who portrays not gods, but those who simply possess ingenuity and the will to continue. And with this ending, Stallone simply tries to say, no, it's bad, and it may get worse, But death isn't the answer. Keep going. See if you can make it. Hi, this is Luke. If you liked that video, please like and subscribe, and click the bell icon for notifications about new videos.